Hey kids, it's story time! So not too long ago, a group called Monkey Paw decided to hold what they called the Retro Rush event, where they'd be re-releasing a lot of old games on the PlayStation Network, one every week. Now this sounds like business as usual for developers these days, until you consider that every single one of these games is an import title, meaning it was previously unavailable to US audience by convenient means before. And we've seen a lot of cool games become available because of this, including the Tomba sequel, Lucifer Ring, and the Fireman 2, but because they were merely publishing these games, a technical hiccup came with the release of one of the titles. Hyper Crazy Climber apparently went through some legal issues concerning its planned release date, meaning it had to be pushed back until things got resolved on the other end. This pushed what was already going to be an obscure release even further into irrelevancy, and because you know my position on obscure titles, it should come as no surprise that I've been following this situation very closely. Luckily, the game was approved and released on the 15th on PSN, which means I can finally bring it to the attention of all of you. Was my diligence worth it? Personally, yes. Objectively, maybe not. Crazy Climber is actually a series in Japan, which had humble beginnings in the arcades. This is evident here by the complete lack of story, limited lives, and absolutely brutal difficulty. Trust me, you'll be making liberal use of the save feature here. Turns out climbing is a pretty rough gig, especially when everything and its mother is trying to keep you from moving upwards. You'll have to deal with boulders, beans, dumbbells, wizards casting fireballs, man-eating plants, sharks, and... oh, for Christ, where's James Rolfe when I need him? Oh, that's where he is. Never mind. It's not like you aren't given the tools to deal with all this, though. You can find shortcuts, bombs, and time-freezing clocks to help turn the odds in your favor, but regardless, there are some obstacles that require special attention. See how there are grates on some of these handholds? They don't just block your path. If one comes down on the ledge you're holding, it'll smush your fingers and make you fall immediately. Some enemies also home in on you, or seem to force you into impossible situations. Now, I didn't figure this out until stage 5, but there is a way to combat this, and you need to pay attention here because if you don't know this trick, the later stages are literally impossible. To ascend, you can use either your right leg or your left leg. Seems kind of excessive until you discover that pushing both at the same time will make your character brace themselves on their current ledge. This renders you completely immune to about 90% of all the hazards in the game, and after getting extremely frustrated on the early stages, going back with this knowledge made them much more enjoyable. I know everyone hates tutorials, yeah, but this is why a lot of people get scared off of import games, or old school games that don't have tutorials explaining this kind of important information. My review would have been a lot more negative had I not accidentally discovered this one mechanic, and luckily, I can pass on the information to all of you. Speaking of things that aren't self-explanatory, here's another pro tip. The instant you start up this game, hop into the options menu and switch over to Control Scheme 1. I couldn't even begin to explain to you how layouts 2 and 3 are supposed to work, and worse yet, it starts off on those by default. Switch it over and never look back. You'll thank me later. Finally, it turns out this game has a little bit of replayability to it. Every stage hides a bonus game within it, which rewards you with a massive gem if you manage to clear the goal within. This gem even appears on the main world map, meaning your ultimate goal seems to be getting one in each area. Is it worth it to do this? Well, like the decision to purchase Crazy Climber to begin with, that depends on your perspective. Honestly, what do we expect from a game that only costs $7 these days? It's not really meant to be an experience that you sit down with for hours on end, getting lost in the setting or letting the fast-paced action take over your thoughts so you can forget about life for a while. I mean, really, look at this cutscene and tell me you want to be immersed in this world's clearly rich and detailed lore. This is a bite-sized game. That is, you play it in bite-sized chunks, doing a little bit at a time in between bigger things in your life. Those can definitely be fun, but not everybody's looking for something like that, especially when it's not even in their own language. And that answers my previous question about it being worth it or not to revisit this game. To which I answer, yes, I do imagine myself coming back to this from time to time, and over those many times I also imagine myself getting my $7 worth. But I'll openly admit that that stance is very subjective. If you like what you see, definitely give this goofy little game a shot, as well as one of the many awesome titles Monkey Paw brought us through this campaign. In that sense, think of Hyper Crazy Climber as like the Pacific Rim of video games. It's not perfect, and it has a very specific audience, yes, but who knows? If this does well, maybe we'll get even more great imports in the future. And that's a sentiment I think we can all get behind.